How's it going, Kitty? Now my mic is. Yeet. How you doing? How's your day? Alright, like it's afternoon there, right? Israel. To get started. I, these Pokemon sound so loud in my head. Wait, no sub button? No, I'm not affiliate yet. I'm shy of it. I need 3 average viewers if I get a sub. Let's see. Have you had a chance to play Pokemon yet? Yes, thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. I just saw that you followed like a minute ago. Yeah, I'm still waiting on the average of 3 viewers. That's where I'm at right now, streaming wise. But that doesn't stop me from having fun, hopping on. I've been into playing a lot of games, but Sword and Shield really has my heart at the moment. So let's get started. Have you played Pokemon before? So, play HS? What's it? Oh, Hearthstone? Oh. I know you play Hearthstone. Excuse me. I don't know about Hearthstone. I'm not a big card gamer. Just cards and me don't go together. Henry's brave to bother. Remember what her goal on Moto Stoke was. Here for a gym challenge. Duh. Time to go to challenge the opening ceremony. Or go to the ceremony. I forgot to do something. Oh man. Hearthstone's a crazy game. Like I watch you play Hearthstone and I'm like I don't know what's going on. I'm lost. Somebody save me. So, if I seem like I'm stumbling through some of these words for this, it's because I am. It's apparently the grammar structure of all the sentences are like, British. What are those subtitles? Yeah, I got subtitles. You want some subtitles? I don't know if I can see them. Are you talking about the white bubble? Is that I'm lost? Is Hey, wait, are you talking about the white bubble, Christina? You had captions on for some reason? Oh, yeah, well, I set it up. I was supposed to be experimental. With OBS, you can actually set up captions. And the captions can, run. I have 2 technically. I have 1 extension, and then I have a caption. You sure you're spelling it the way you think it's supposed to be spelled? Please? Because, I know caption is spelled C-A-P-T-I-O-N. But I'm running around. I'm not too far in the game right now. This is my Poke setup. I'm sitting at, Ryu's my starter Pokemon. If you haven't seen Score Bunny. Score Bunny's freaking amazing. I think he's cute. I think he's a cute Pokemon. He looks emo and like a raider, but I don't know what else to say. Yeah, caption. Yep, exactly. DK. When was the last time you played Pokemon? Look, it's my doggo. It's my corgi. Which, have you seen my corgi? Bring him on, so you can see him. The Maples. Oh, you've seen pictures of him. Have you seen it on stream though? You never played what? Pokemon? Why is everyone talking? How can I see their thought bubbles? That's weird. Ooh. Never play Pokemon. Ah, okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, I will explain a lot. Right now, I'm going to the gym's challenge ceremony, and then I'll explain battle and stuff. But what just growled at me? Oh, it's Charizard. So Leon on the right hand side here, he's the gym challenger. Not gym challenger, the champion. He's a champion of the region. So the region I'm in is called Galar. Galar is a region in the Pokemon world. Now, I just gotta thank you for following. Do you unfollow and then follow back? But thank you. I really appreciate it. Oh, you should give my commands a try. If you do !laser, you can actually play some sounds. Hold on. Before you do that, I forgot to set that up. I have to do this every time I start it up. I have to go and set my sounds up. Alright, now you can do it. And then I gotta thank Kinkin because he had me sub to your channel. And I was like, oh, that's dope. It tells me you've become a trainer worthy of endorsement I gave you. Ooh, give me something. A piece of charcoal? He gave me a piece of charcoal. Why did I get a piece of charcoal? So your Pokemon can hold stuff. And sometimes they give you like a boost to your speed or boost to your attack power, stuff like that, you know. Or they could be like a berry, which your berries, they have different effects. So you have ones that heal, you have ones that heal you from being paralyzed and stuff. So okay, so island be held by a Pokemon. It's combustible fuel that boosts the power of fire type moves. Sweet. We're gonna get boosted. It's because in Pokemon they don't care if you're boosting your Pokemon. It's steroids. Giving them steroids. That's what's happening. You take the lift up the upper levels, headed for the stadium next. Nice. Alright, so once I get a chance, okay, I'm gonna hop in here. Give Ryu a item. Doesn't have anything at the moment, so we're gonna do this. Let's see. Yeah, you have the kitty. You're gonna lurk. Thank you for the lurk. Yeah. You would have to teach me Hearthstone, and maybe it'll make sense then. A bit. Give this to Pokemon. I wonder what the white herb is. I just picked this up. Will restore any lowered stat in battle. It can only be used once. Alright. Citrus berry. A berry consumed. A Pokemon restores HP by a small amount during battle. Speed stat will increase when it's in a pinch. Okay. Tanga berry. Will lessen. HS isn't hard. The tutorial basically explains the game mechanics. Okay. But what makes you a successful player in Hearthstone? You know what I mean? Like, maybe I'm thinking too hard into it. Making this deck is the hard part, but I can help. Okay. Then I will give Hearthstone a try, because I need to branch out and grow my community and my involvement in games, because just because I'm a little scared of some minor complexity doesn't mean I should not try to enjoy a game. You made it too. Yes. This is my rival, Hop. He's crazy. I'll say the same. He's always doing these moves. It's freaking crazy. That's why I call him crazy. A bit nervous, really. No, it's nerves. I'm only trembling because I'm so excited. Come on, Ty. It's the time the world learned our names. I don't know if they want to learn our names. You see me? Oh, by the way, I'm really happy about this flamingo shirt. Just gonna zoom in on it. Alright, see this beautiful flamingo shirt? Oh yeah. Alright, back to it again. Oh, my bad.
I need a bath.
Set off my sound ideas.
Some yogurt. Yeah. And a place to go.
Sam's the one that picked it out. She's like, here, take a flamingo shirt because you'll love the hell of it. Not wearing any shirt. Jealous. I walked around without a shirt, or streamed without a shirt. I'd get yelled at. You'd be like, you're violating the TOS. I don't know. There's some stuff guys get away with that women don't. Who is that person? Make sure to register the gym challenge. I need to see your endorsement, please. Shirtless. staple of humankind. Fancy that this is the first time we've had a challenger endorsed by the champion. Alright, well now you've had two because I am as well. What, two of you at once? I wonder what come over Leon this year. I wonder what's come over Leon. The two of you must be something special. Just slightly. I'm Leon's little brother, in fact, and the next champion. Get me all signed up, would you? Well, yes, I'm trying to. If you'll give me a moment. This guy's bossy. Pop's just telling him what to do. Here, the two have been successfully registered. Choose your preferred number for your uniform, if you'd be so kind. What number should I do? Should I'm big on 7, so I'll do 7. Let me know. Which one? 7, 8, 6, 5. You do. I wonder. You can do 3 numbers. It looks like, as you can tell on the left, right side, it says 0, 3. So. Ah! Why did I just leave? That was weird. There you go. See? These 3 numbers. We'll just do 777. Sound good. 777 just sounds weird. Just looks weird. I mean, it's supposed to be a lucky number, but I'm fine with just 7. Like how they let you pick your number. Like, what if someone else picked the same number? It's gonna be held there tomorrow. Taking part have been booked a room at the new nearby Badu drop-in. This is my floating mic. My mic of floatingness. What are you gonna do? Alright, all trainers take part. I'm gonna drop league chairman for you. You even booked us all the hotel rooms. I'm off to check out the fancy digs. Dude just keeps like super saying everywhere. He's like, this is not my final form. Let's go. I honestly just want to chill with this so much right now. I'm so happy. This game is just so much. Must be challenger or tie. It ends this way, so be kind to follow me. He's gotta walk around with his arms. He's got that shoulder problem. If you ever heard of it. Large biceps. Oh yeah, don't mind me. He just like walked off before I could even actually like follow him. There he is. He have arrived. He's got the Pokeballs on his hips and stuff. It's like, ah, fancy. Rest to build your strength for tomorrow. I don't understand. It makes no sense. All right. Can I go back here? Oh, I found a place. I wonder if I could run into the gym leaders. Now that I'm free to just roam around. No one's gonna stop me now. I'm free. I'm free. I'm balling. Why is there 2 of them? Oh, it was TMM. Okay, I don't care about the TMM. No, it's not what I want. It's not what I want. I thought I was. Okay, this guy. Let's see, Pokemon, heal potion. Is there anything else? No. Man, I need more money. I feel like I don't have a lot of money. I feel like I use your rolling window when it comes to playing Pokemon, but right now I feel very sad. Let's see. Let's go. Yeah, I had to use revive a couple times. So 6,000 for just that many. Just buy 1. Rather have 5 revives than 1 revive. How's my Pokemon? It should be healed. I thought, yeah, I already healed them up. They have so many Pokemon centers here. Is this a cafe? No. I thought, you know, the cafe will at least give you something, but it doesn't give you anything. Alright, let's see. Most important thing, no one's live the way you want. I wish old people said that. Boomer. Okay, boomer. Alright, I didn't really care about that. There's another bridge over there. This town is interesting. What? Everything's made of brick. Here, let's just go to the inn. We'll just go to the inn and we'll just, sleep for night. Oh, baby, baby, keep our soul. Oh, what the hell? Wait, why does he got a shield and everything? Shield and sword? Both got yourself registered. Nice. What are you doing? I'm researching the mysterious Pokemon that are said to be slumbering in Woodland. I reckon if I look into some of the Galar's legends, I might figure something out. Care to join me? You're here already anyway. Gotta show this amazing statue that looks like Leon. Statue of the hero who once saved the Galar region. I could run through a legend right quick if you fancy. Short version. Black storm covered the Galar region. People called it the darkest day. Land was assaulted by the gigantic Pokemon, but they were defeated by a single young hero, bearing a sword and shield. Black storms and swords and shield and all. Research. You'll be right. Oh, you'll be right. Hey, thanks. I'll muddle through somehow. Don't you worry. She's definitely not gonna be able to muddle through all this research she has to do. Alright, shouldn't you check in? Well, you're the one talking at us. If you hear anything about any hero or whatnot, we'll tell you. We'll tell you all the deets. Oh, man. Not these guys. Come on, let's way to the big city. Properly cheer on the gym challengers. Team Yell is here to help after all. You're in for a battle if you want to stop us. I'm up for it, sure. Oh, we're just going straight in a battle. We're just gonna make this in ours. Didn't we tell you, mate? You get in our way and you're in for a battle. Team Yell's all about helping. Helping one very special trainer win the gym challenge, that is. We want to make sure she gets cheered on nice and proper. Now you're gonna help us. It's funny. It's just punk rockers. Now you're gonna help us make some noise. No, I don't want to help you make noise. I want to silence you guys. You guys are too loud. I'm cold right now. I'm freezing. Alright, let's take him out. We'll give him a double kick. Super effective. I don't even know what level this guy's. Oh, he's level 9. Oh, so Christina, you were asking. I forgot. I just totally forgot. It's my team. Every time you battle, you get XP. So I won the battle. All my Pokemon get XP. It's nice. It's across the board. It used to not be like that. It used to be like only Pokemon you were using to fight would battle. Oh, he only had one Pokemon on him. Okay. How about anyone else? Is that the only guy? The revenge. Okay. Yeah, it looks like I'm gonna battle the next one. They're cheering on. Covered mate. Yeah, you can be my cover of my band. I mean, you can cover my band. She's got a poster. She's holding sideways. Some chick that looks like she's like laying down, but I'm assuming she's just holding it weird. For dramatic applause. Here's Nickit. Okay. So this is Ryu. He's a bunny. He's a score bunny, to be honest. He's a fire type Pokemon. So you can go fight. You can go here. I have 4 different attacks you can choose. If you hit Y here, it'll actually show you the power, what category it is. Which I haven't learned the categories yet. It does tell you fire is its element. Like this one's fighting. Fighting is like a physical attack. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I haven't done Flame Charge yet. But. So, anyways, I'm gonna close that out. I haven't used Flame Charge, but I just double kick. I'll just get it out. So Nickit is a fox type Pokemon who a fox-looking Pokemon. That is a dark Pokemon. Everything has a weakness. So fire is weak to water, but strong to grass. Ground is weak to fighting moves because like, fighting moves. That doesn't make much sense, but fighting and ground. Anyways, you have fairy, you have dragon, you have different types of Pokemon, and they're all weak to different elements or different abilities like normal attacks. Well, I think normal doesn't have a weakness as much, unless it's fighting. Yeah, I think it's fighting. Fighting's normal's weakness, and then fighting doesn't really have a weakness per se. Ground just against poison. Anyways, we'll go on. We also have electricity. And that's pretty crazy. Team Yell Grunt beaten. Must got a bit carried away being in this swanky hotel and all. Sorry for getting in your way. Yeah, move it, punk. Just gonna yell him. Aw oh, man, swanky sophisticated air in here had me off my game. I couldn't keep my cool. I wasn't expecting checking in would be such a big fuss, Ty. Sneaking in some Pokeball battles without me? Don't think you can get ahead of me that easy. I need to get some training in, so I'm joining. Here, I'll even heal up your Pokemon too. Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm Hop, one of this year's gym challengers, and who's gonna be the next champion? Now let's have us a nice 2-on-2. We got a double battle. Double battles where you and another trainer get together and you battle. To me, it's pretty simple because I've been playing Pokemon since I was like yay high. I got my first game from my cousin. It was Red, Pokemon Red, and it was pretty dope. Yell and grunt, grunt and yell. It's grunt and yell and yell and grunt. I just noticed that. That's such a bad innuendo. Alright. Go. Woo! You guys see these cute Pokemon. You got a bunny and then you got a sheep. A sheep. A fooly sheep. We're about to take these guys out. We're terrible people, and we'll just keep using the same move. I'll just hit Nickit. Oh, Nickit used Quick Attack. I wasn't ready for that. Doesn't hit me though. Hit Wooloo. Nickit is out. Down for the count. Hold on. Well, we'll do my announcer voice for the battles. Let's see. Speech of Fire.
Maybe? I don't know. Maybe. I don't think that I like the voice too much. Let's see.
You can do fan noise. Fan noise. No.
Ovation? Protest. Speecher ovation. Oh, let's go for like announcer. I want announcer. I want something for this, and so I can be like, oh. Maybe we should just edit this. This volume. Ambient effects. I don't think it's on. There you go. Style. I'm gonna know what style does. Style. Yeah. No. Alright. We'll just try this. Real good, level 20. Zigzagoon, hit. Zigzagoon, use snow. Use speed attack fell. Wooloo, speed attack fell. Fight. double kick. Zigzoon has fainted.
Alright, back to normal voice. No shirt, no. Oh. Oh man, I'm freaking cold right now though. I really am. I have the window open, I'm dying. Watching my dog just stretch. Oh. Like phasing in and out, guys. Oh, cold today. My dog just looked up at me and he's got a piece of cardboard stuck to his muzzle. Freaking hilarious. Oh, that smells so good right now. Why does my sweater smells so good? Alright, I forgot to check something. Freaking cold, man. It's crazy. Oh, alright. Oh, man. Really am cold. Why do I have to be so cold? So cold. Oh, Ken streaming earlier. It's I missed him. I missed Ken's stream. Why? Alright. Defeated Team Yell Grunt. My voice isn't sure when I'm sad. I want to yell, but I'm unsure. I came to see the gym challenge opening ceremony, but this is awful. Ooh, I got 1400 for that. Nice. Alright, we'll take it. About to cry. What are you lot doing here? Marine! Nothing, we was just, you know, all terrible curious about like, other gym challenge, but you gotta show a bit of restraint. Oh, I read it wrong. Totally read that wrong, man. Marina, sorry about them. They're just a bunch of my fans. Call them some Team Miel and follow me around cheering for me. I think they've let it all go to their heads a bit. She's a punk. Come on, you lot. Back home with you now. What do you mean back home with you? I can't tell. She's just yelling. She'll cop wanting to support me and all that they tend to be a bit shirty with other gym challenges. Are you a gym challenger too? Was it? Pretty impressive. You already have a set of fans to call your own. Well, that's already head. I think she just fell in love with me. Good evening. Welcome to the Beaudop Gym. Yep, one of the challenging trainers. League has booked a room for you. Thank you. Sticky situation hooligans earlier. Hope you have a pleasant stay here with us. Sleep well. Alright, come on. Let's get this action going. Let's get on with our lives, right? Ow. Just popped my neck. Did anybody hear that? That sounded like it just reverberated through the room. It was that bad. Morning. So this is it. The legend really begins. Watch out, Ty. I beat you the Motostoke Stadium. That's what he has to say. We're like, oh, I'm gonna beat you today, Ty. No, he's oh, I just passed one girl. Marine. Opening ceremony starting soon. Please allow me to escort you to the stadium. Yes. Sure. Follow. Don't. Oh, this time it just bobs you straight to the stadium. I really just want to get this on. It's these little scenes between is killing me right now. What is this girl? What's her name? I'm dead nervous. This is the only open ceremony. What's the matter with me? My Pokemon all seem to be aching about it, so why can't I still feel the same way? Oh, so everyone here's a fellow challenger. Yep. I don't know why he's talking to me like that. Okay, I am dying to start, but heaps are starting out like this, but only some small number will make it to the end. Will you make it to the end? Finally, it's time to come for another gym challenge. I was endorsed by the chairman himself. In other words, among all those elite enough to get endorsement, I'm the most elite of all. So why don't you clear off and not try talking to me again, will you? It's positively criminal of you wasting the time with someone as important as me. I'm just trying to learn your name, bro. I like how everyone else is in these snazzy outfits, and then there's like me and Hop. He was smiling like a goofball at me. Makes me wear a uniform. You need to get it changed as well. I refuse. You don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm wearing my backpack, so it's weird. Alright, now let me take it off just for this. Oh, that's scary. That is scary. Why? I like the 7 on the back. 7 just fits so nice. It's so sleek. Like, anybody agree with me? Sharp as pen, that 7 there. This really is a number for you. I wonder how many people pick 7 for the challenging number. I wonder if I'm definitely not the only one, so we'll see. But I mean I'll ask someone now. Oh, feeling better. Oh. Look at this guy. His name is Rose. His name is Rose. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Rose, the chairman of the Pokemon League. I know that everyone gathered here and everyone watching from home have all been waiting for this big moment. It's my pleasure to announce that finally the Galar Region Gym Challenge. Oh, yes, the Gym Challenge. Participants must defeat 8 gym leaders and gather the 8 gym badges to improve their skills as a trainer. Only the most worthy will have the honor of challenging the greatest champion in history. Now I would like to invite the gym leaders to show themselves. I like my announcer voice. I just leave it with my own, and I feel like I'm better imitating it than my sound board. Look at these guys, awesome walk. Fighting Farmer, the grass type expert Milo, the Raging Wave, the master of water types Nessa, ever burning man of fire. Here comes the fire type veteran Kaboom. Outsiders. The Galar karate prodigy, nobody's better with fighting types than B. The master of fantastic theater, it's the charming fairy type user Opal. Hard rock crusher, because please welcome the rock type master Grody. And last but not least, the tamer of dragons Raihan, the top gym leader. Unfortunately, we're missing one, but these are the gym leaders that we in the Galar region are proud to call our own. We're missing one. What's the last one that's missing? Yeah, fighting is a normal type? I think it's normal type, isn't it? Because they didn't say anything about normal type, but normal type exists, so. And my hair looks weird. Wish I gotta change up my hairstyle. My hair, well, I guess it, yeah. We'll get there eventually. Oh, that was it. Yep. Standing there on the pitch of the stadium in front of everyone. There's really no words for it, but I can barely contain myself. My heart's racing. You made it last, Hop, and you too, Ty. Rose, so your 2 challengers are champion endorsed himself. Welcome, it's a delight to meet you. I'm Rose, of course. Should be like a softer voice. Oh, and what's this? I see you both already possess Dynamax bands. How wonderful. Seems you two have been led here by the guiding light of the wishing stars. By the way, it was my wonderful company that invited those Dynamax bands, you know? His company. Dare I say, the Sears Gyms challenge is looking to be an absolute blast. Very good indeed. That means the whole Galar region is in for some excitement. Gym challenge is an excellent opportunity to show off your Dynamax Pokemon. Now, I'm terribly sorry, but there's some urgent business I need to tend to, so I must be on my way. Whoop! Best of luck to both of you. See you guys. Let's get out. It's all night long. All night long. Chairman certainly seems to be in high spirits. Now listen closely, you two. You both only just started on your path as trainers. If you want to win, you need to do more than just train your Pokemon. You need to train. See, I forgot to do something real quick. Let's see, general. What's in general? Anybody doing the general? Afternoon. Due to a disgusting cold day. It's freaking cold. It's cold. It's freaking cold. That's what it is. Yeah, playing Pokemon freezing. See, I forgot to go in here. Pat. See. To affiliate and belong. Let me get this out, and then we will call this. Get hyped, guys. Get real hyped. You're never gonna believe this, but I'm live. I'm not gonna post in two different places. I need some support, some mental support, guys, right now. Praxis. Alright, cool. Self-promotion. That was escrow. Pokemon Love. Let's see. Oh, I need to find more people to enjoy watching movies. Fox. Ooh, what movies do we watch with Fox, guys? See, you need to train yourselves too. Oh, there it is. I was already in there. Not trampling over anybody. And they're busy. Busy up in here. It's Sunday, huh? I am so behind. I did not care. Who watched the esports? 'Cause I did not give two craps about esports. Ken, I need to catch you. Why did I miss you? I'm sad. Oh, I forgot to post that. Oops. Yeah, it is what it is, right? Let's see. Still need to get my average viewers up. You know the gym challenge has a set order that you gotta visit gyms in, right? Yep. First is turf field, and to get there we need to head to Route 3. Ooh. What's on the Route 3? What are we gonna do? Oh yeah, guys. You're gonna get there one day. My life will be complete. Will you be render me? Going to be Spider-Man. 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 You guys will never believe it, but I will be the Spider-Man. Be the very best, no one can deny. Have you ever seen the rain? Alright, Route 3. Okay. So where are we at right now? Oh, we're right here, so we gotta go Route 3 that way. You gonna be able to make it that way? I feel like that's too direct. Ooh, a chairman's giving me a gift. I wonder what gift I'm getting. Such a wonderful man. Excuse me, the gift is access to flying taxi. This will allow you to, in a word, fly. Flying taxi will allow you to travel quickly back to areas you've already visited. Nice. Use flying taxi service. One of their well-trained Corvi Knight will have you zipping across the Galar region to your desired destination in no time at all. Just open the X menu and use the town map to choose where you want to go. Nice. It's alright with you. I'll read a segment for the flying taxi user manual. Press X and select the town map. Open options. Choose the place you'd like to go. Actually, if I really wanted to, I can actually. You guys want to check out my sexy woman's voice? It's amazing. Turfield is in the right. Next one. When traveling to a new place, it's best to get there on your own two legs, don't you think? 2 legs? Only 2 legs?
What should we do? Adult to children? Oh my gosh, guys. This is the best. You never understand. I always wanted to be a child.
I can just do this deeper voice. Ha!
Alright, we're gonna talk like this all day. Oh, are they blocking my way? I think they're blocking my way. I can't actually make it over there, guys. Let's go how I'm talking the whole entire time. You guys
gonna have to put up with it. Nah, it's fine. Go back to my normal voice. My ooh voice is not as strong as I want it to be. Ooh, ooh. Sorry, I'm sitting here entertaining myself. It's always the best, you know. We gotta stay cleaner than anyone else if we want to steal the spotlight from our rivals. Oh, hold on. Oh, we're fighting? I wasn't ready for this. You caught me unawares. How dare you? Hop. You're just hopping away at me. Just hopping for a fight. That's what hop is. I was hopping for a fight. You thought I was bad. He's worse. Now stare into my eyes as I beat him with 1 punch. Ooh, flame charge. I forgot I leveled up with my Ryu. Flame charge, go! Boom! Knocked him out. That's what you get. I don't know how when he got to level 11, but I'm already level 20, so. Ba, 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 back. Get back. Oh no, he's bringing out Grookey. He's only level 14? What the hell? Like, dude. Level up your Pokemon. My voice is dying. Oh, it wasn't super effective. No, I knew that already. I'm just going easy on him, alright? I don't want to beat him in 1 punch, okay? He's supposed to be my rival, alright? I'm so mean. Somebody save me. Boom! Bye, Grookey. It was nice knowing you. Should know you mastered your matchup type style. You know that from the beginning. They added that like little dialogue he says, and it's just freaking funny as hell. I don't even mess with it. Dude. Oh, back home. And people are struggling lately. Ooh, Olsen. Olsen, that was 11 hours ago, man. Are you alive, dude? Watch people. Come hang out, guys. I want all my friends. I don't know, I'm excited. It's nice. It's nice to hop on and just play Pokemon with people. I like encourage people. Come in, come have fun. Come sit down with me. Come enjoy the game. Like, just challenge each other to be the very best. No one will ever understand. Unless they play. Then they'll understand for sure. Let's do Ember. I saw more power moves for that. So PP is like how many how much energy you have for each move individually. So when you go here and you go to look at the right hand side, you'll see the 23/25. Well, I have 25 times I can use that one move, and every time I use that move, the amount of times I can use it goes down. So sometimes there's attacks that affect that, but they call it PP, which I think is power points. I want to say power points. Ah, my nose itches. And every time your power points go down, less times you use them, you can use the move. Not that it's less effective, which is interesting. So I don't know why they pick power points. Like, he healed him and I still killed him. Ah, my nose is dying. I'm just, guys, I'm dying today. Can you guys save me? Please save your boy. He's drowning. Save your boy. He's drowning. Oh man, I'm dying. Yeah, no, my nose is dying. Oh, sorry, give me a second, guys. We will continue. Oh, beat him. Did I get money? Is Hop quietly funding my trip? Is that why he's losing all the time? He's like, hey, I know you need a bit of money. Here you go. It's like Salt Bay. Sorry. I can't think of what salt is. It like this? Salt Bay is like this. Like. It just looks weird in the camera. I'll give you one of my elite cards. That's how good I think you did in battle. Oh, I got an elite card from Hop. Nice. Starts right now from here in Motostoke. I'm gonna keep on winning my way to the championship match. Hey, Majama, what's up, dude? How's it going, man? How's your day been? Freaking, playing some amazing Pokemon Sword and Shield. Did you get this game, by the way? Have you actually played Pokemon? I'm just kidding. I bet you have. I feel like you'd be one of those people that would. I wonder what this guy's want to do. How's your day been? Getting your Pokemon? How I'm getting my Pokemon on, dude? Pokemon for life. I actually been enjoying the hell out of this game. The game is amazing. But how's your day going? You gonna stream today, or you saving it for the weekdays? There's some Zigzagoon. What's this? What the heck is this? Look, you can whistle at him. Okay, I was like trying to get out of battle. I was like, why is it not battling? It's a gossiper. Majama Jamama. Majama. Going good, man. No streams today for you. Nice. Okay. We'll take easy. Enjoy your Sunday off, you know. I'm just super excited. I haven't fought this Pokemon before. I don't want to kill it. I want to actually capture it. Like my Pokemon, Scorbunny. Scorbunny is one of the starter Pokemon if you didn't know that. Are you actually looking into getting the game, Majama? Pokemon Sword or Shield? I didn't ask that yet. Oh yeah. Quick attack. Here it come. Just need to get it low enough so I can capture it. Gossifer's calm down. Probably not, to be honest. Lots of new Pokemons, right? Yes and no. I feel like they brought in some of the older ones, but they're not that bad. Probably not, to be honest. Oh, no problem, dude. Oh, that's not the information I was trying to go for. Let's go, Pokeballs. But I'm super excited about this game. Honestly, if I recommend a Pokemon game for people to get in, it would be probably this game. I want to say this is more true to like the original ones in a sense, because you actually still battle Pokemon. Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu and Eevee were different. They were more towards like the Pokemon Go style. So to me, that's great. I enjoy the hell out of it, but I think you lost a little bit of sense of what Pokemon is about. At least from the original titles. You can play with friends, kinda. Yeah, you can kind of. You can battle and stuff against friends. So, but you can't, as far as I know, you can't go around beating gyms and stuff and like collecting things. I don't want to change this. If I catch something that's a mime or something, I'm gonna call him Mr. Majama. I just could put Majama. Look, I already got one Pokemon named Fox. And then here's my corgi, the Yamper, Thunderfart. Yeah, see they got this is called a Yamper. The Pikachu I got because I play Let's Go Pikachu. Nuzleaf is in here, which is C-Dot originally. And this is called a Nickit. So I named him Fox. Pokemon. Yeah, pretty much. Here's Meowth. I got Meowth. And this is Scorbunny. This is one of the starter Pokemon. The other two are Grookey and Sobble. So, but let's get going. Just having a blast. Here, they brought Vulpix in. Like Zegazoom. So they brought a couple of the original Pokemon. Not original, because Zegazoom was like later, wasn't he? Wasn't it like Gen 2 or 3? I forget. We got a Flame Charger. Boom! Hit him. Nice. It was one shot hit. But I enjoy the hell of this game. This game has been amazing. It's gone back to like being original, and it's fun. Here's Vulpix. A cute little Vulpix. But any plans for today? You just doing home chores and everything around home? Honestly, I love talking in Majama. I love hopping in your stream. You make me want to play Sekiro. How's the weather in Jersey, by the way? Because it's cold here, but there's no snow, so I don't have any issues. See, we're gonna capture this Vulpix because I'm hoping as I catch him, I can get some shinies. Shinies! Yes, got him. Shinies are usually started off by, like you can find shinies if you keep capturing Pokemon. The more Pokemon you capture without them fleeing, or you killing them, gives you a better chance. So it should faint. Yeah, we'll see. Let's see. This is for Pikachu. Spark it. It's only a 30 powered. I don't know. Let's see, what do I want to do? There's a electric orb. Orb! Go! Quick attack. I should double team. I'll replace double team. The double team doesn't really do anything but increase your speed. That only helps if you're not about to die. I die too often. No. Not want to keep bulk picks. Nickname Vulpix. Ooh, something shiny. Ooh, found a big mushroom. Oh, they added like different things. You can go camping with your Pokemon and everything. That is interesting. You see that? That is. Alright. It's like a stinger effect, but you hear it whooshing. Hear that whoosh? Yeah. Whoosh. Oh, no. I'm trying to sneak past these guys so I can grab this. Heal Belt Ball. Restores the HP of a Pokemon caught with it and eliminates any status conditions. Nice. You don't always get those. It's cold. Caught me. No! You saw the opening ceremony, right? Then I know why I'm excited and want to battle. But I don't think it lasts, Ray. I think this is just normal trainers. They're like, oh, I want to battle you. So if I beat you, I can be a challenger, right? Oh no, it's a Vulpix, guys. Let's give it a double kick. They even made it easy for you. It actually tells you what moves gonna be more effective against the type once you've battled the Pokemon before. It's one of those new game effects, and I apologize. I am having like my allergies are going so bad right now. Ugh, you think I'd be like, you know, alert and dying while I'm alert? I don't know. I'm inert. Majama be doing bits. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do Majama Shadow. Shadow for Majama. Majama. Let's see. There you go. Majama Shadow. He's the best. Join the cult. It's not a cult. You're doing Celeste. Celeste is pretty crazy when I'll actually do it. Well, it's more tech. It's just I like the whoosh. Students foreign languages. Schoolgirl Hannah. Let the fight begin! I didn't hear that. Did you guys hear that? I have to turn it up a bit. Let me see if it goes. There it goes. Let's see. Probably not gonna get him in one hit, but we'll do this anyways. I almost one hit him. Critical hit. No, not tackle. Not that, please. Anything but that. See, the quick attack, quick. Before they have a chance to attack us back. Panchan. It's a panda and a Pokemon. It's a Pandabon. Wow, my nose is itchy. I'm doing nothing to help it. But I lost. My Pokemon Swavy was enough. Swabby. Get Swaff. See, just enjoy this beautiful art of the game. Ah, ran into the Zigzagoon. Dang it. I don't have to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. We'll hit him with a 1-2 punch. Attack first. We're down pretty low. I'm gonna try to capture him. Let's see. I gotta heal Ryu. Ryu. I think Ryu. I figured I'd shout out Katie too. I just remembered. Yes, grew to level 21. Thunderfart grew to level 17. Nope. I'm good. Thank you. Let's see, I'm gonna heal real quick because Ryu's gonna be hurting a little bit. Restore. There you go. I don't want to use any berries yet. This only does 20 HP. I have to use like 3 of them. Yeah, no, I'm fine with like 1 health point being down. I'm a creepin'. That Zigzagoon almost hit me. Oh, you can camp. Okay, cool. And you can visit other people's camps. I wonder if I'm gonna see anybody else's camps. Am I even connected? I don't think I am. Oh, Majama, you're right. I forgot you could do that. No, I want to trade. Connect to the internet. That's what I want to do. Connecting. Please stand by. I figured it doesn't automatically connect you. Yes. Here we go. Now I'm gonna see everybody. I gotta wait for this to zoom and decide where it wants to go. No, oh, it almost hit me. Oh, that was scary. Oh, what's this? Oh, it's one of those. It's one of the ones I just caught. I think the Gossifleur. Gossifleur, there you go. Gossifleur! It's such a cute Pokemon. Gonna give you a quick attack. Oh, Cotton down. Must be a super soft Pokemon. Oh, Sweet Scent? What the heck is Sweet Scent? I don't. Evasiveness. I'm not gonna avoid anymore. Okay. Well, I don't want to avoid. I'm just gonna hit you real quick. Hold still. That's all I care about me. Oh, that's yeah. I mean, that's all I care about. I can't even speak anymore. I'm a Dunza Pokemon. I did have 3 in there. That's weird. Mr. Majama. I can see all these. This looks so much better. Do I have Majamas? Should be here. No, did my sub run out already? Uh oh, there's a wild doggo in the background. Is a There you are. My dog's coming. He got his Christmas tree. Oh. There you go. My dog is being funny. He's just standing in there. Oh, stretch. Yas. Caught another Pokemon. I'm hoping I get a shiny. I'm dying for a shiny. Come on. Big grinding sword. Mega Drain. Nice. Yes, I want you for gonna move for Mega Drain. Let's see. His Mega Drain does 40, while Absorb only does 20. Oh, there's a maple. Oh, there's a wild maple. Oh, I found a wild maple. Oh, it's so cute. Oh, it's a maple. It's a wild doggo. I found a doggo. Yes, amazing doggo. Oh, all the amazingness. Why are you so cute? Oh, yes, you're so cute. You are a dork. You're caught up in all my wires on my desk. You know that? Oh, yes. I get kisses from my cute doggo. Aren't you guys jealous? Cute doggo. Like to give Gossamer and Glossifer? No. I want to say Glossamer. I'm a dork. Wonder if you, yeah, oh. Why did I just see a Pokeball show up in his hand? Pokeball. I'm just gonna keep running to back him. Hello, my name is Ty. What's yours? Oh, you got me, dang it. Oh, instead of Pokemon, I found a trainer. I'll have to check to see how strong you are. I am strong. Mighty strong. You were challenged by schoolboy Marvin. Ooh, Marvin? Who's Marvin? What have you done with Marvin? Come on, Ryu. I know you can do it. Let's see. Attack. Let's do Ember. It's a grass Pokemon, Badoo. Little Badoo. Badoo. What a boot. Ah, I just sneezed my brains out. To infinity and beyond. Let's see, super effective. Use Ember. Let me puke fire at you for a second. Can't wait until I get flamethrower. Then you just puke flames. Just, I mean, yeah, you know what I mean. I'm done. I'm out. Not existing anymore. Run into Sonia. Sonia? Sonia? Is it Sonia? 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 I don't know what you call it. You look a real ace out there during the opening ceremony. Oh, thanks. I think she's trying to come on to me. Where's Hop? He went on ahead. Can't sit still. Nope. Because he wants to catch up to his brother. Of course he does. Something a bit interesting. What is that? See that building over there? It's a company owned by Chairman Rose. Past Route 3, there's a mine where they dig up the ore. The building over there processes the energy. Ooh. In other words, the chairman is responsible for providing Galar region with its energy too. Nice. Can't say I really get him, but the chairman seems like a pretty brilliant guy, right? There's a little escape, something from having a chin wag with me. It's a little something for having a chin wag with me. It's a escape rope. I guess chin wag means chat. Having a little bit of a chat. That British slang going on right now. Be killing miss. Heal up your Pokemon too. Ooh, Pokemon heal. Nice. Good luck, Gym Challenger. Nice. Thank you. I'm just gonna go off this way. Let me go. Let me go. You can't hold me back. Ooh, what's this? Shiny. This is a really ADHD game. You know that, right? Oh, what is this? What is this? Is it that? Oh, I don't know what it is. I don't know what Pokemon this is. Roly Coly. Oh, look, I found a doggo. I found a freaking doggo. I freaking found a freaking doggo. We're gonna double kick it because it's a rock. Oh, no, I probably just killed it. I did. I just killed it. Oh. No, I just messed up my streak. Oh, let's go. We'll grind out shinies later. Just enjoy the game while we're at it. Alright, let's see if we can get. I want to capture one of these guys. Let me check something while we're waiting. Whoa, there. Right. You're gonna get it. There you are, doggo. I got a doggo. He's so cute. You don't even believe it. He's a doggo. Not very effective. I already have not very effective. Ah, man. I don't know what to do. Let's see, let's do move info. That's does 30. That's does 40. That does. Oh. This does 50. Damn, okay. For not being very effective, it's a really strong move, apparently. Oh, let's see. You Smackdown. No, not Smackdown. That hurts. Oof. That's like Seismic Toss. They changed it to Smackdown now? Or does the Seismic Toss still exist, though? That's the question. A very important question. I will find out the answer to. Guys, my dog's attacking me. He's under the seat right now. Holding onto this toy. Alright, we're gonna capture this guy. So why not? Got him. Got him. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Gotcha. Gotcha. Oh. You're having way too much fun with this. Put that wiener away. What are you doing, doggo? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Just throw the ball. I mean the toy from. Alright, let's get it going. Roly-Coly's data will be added. I'm probably like on the smallest list right now for people, for Pokemon. Oh no, run! Don't get me, Roly-Coly. Go sneak by him. Is that... Did I just... Oh. Oh, this guy wants a battle. Ran by him. Someone set up a Pokemon camp? Nice. I will hop in that camp in a second. Ooh, my name is Fred. It's Tad. Postman Tad. Oh no. Oh, there he is. See. Gotta fight this Delibird. I haven't fought a Delibird yet, so I don't know. I should probably just double kick him. Nice. Get him. Get him while he's down. Get him while he's down. Doggo. Doggo is attacking me right now. It's a terrible doggo. Can you stop attacking me? Oh, I just noticed. My bad. How did I not notice that it did that? Not... Hold on. What's going on? Oh. My bad. Okay. Sorry, I'm messing with stuff. What am I on right now? Oh, am I using display? Am I using my display capture and I wasn't paying attention? Yeah, I was using my display capture. I wasn't actually using my... Ah, why, Ty? Why? There we go. That fixed this thing, sort of. Full screen. I don't like it when it does that border around. Hold on. I don't think I can fix it. It doesn't really give me a chance to. Don't mind the flashing. Let's see. Go full screen again. And then I'm going to fix this. This is going to drive me nuts. fix this because it's gonna drive me nuts. Alright, so apparently I'm just SOL. That's the capture card, doing what I wanted to. And I will always cut off a little bit of the edge. Just a little bit. Okay. Alright, we'll call it that. We'll call it that right now. Let's see. I was carrying you to the victory. Yes, you were. Ooh, nice. 1,300 monies. Monies in that bank. What is going on? Why is my screen flickering? I might go back to the display capture. Hold on, let's see if it keeps flickering. We'll figure it out. What the hell, Pokemon? There's nothing like Sabbath camp and cooking. I'm a good meal. Here, you can add this berry. Ooh, to the pot. Nice. I'm just trying to figure out why there's a line coming from the back of this. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why there's a line. Oh, it's smoke. Ever come across a tent? Check it out. I. Yes. Hi, Maple. Oh, why are you attacking my foot? Why are you attacking my foot right now? Attacking my foot. Gotta keep bringing this to me, but you're not really playing. You're not really playing. Not playing fair, at least. Nice. This is her. Yeah. Oh, this is mine. Well, no, I don't have that Pokemon. I don't know what Pokemon that is. Oh, it's a Cherub? That's what it looks like. Doesn't look like a normal Cherub. Bonbon. It's a Bonbon. Okay. Let's chat. So it wants to play with other Pokemon? Okay. Go play. I'm gonna take a toy out. It's for a toy. Throw a ball out. Here, maybe they'll like the ball. Get the ball, guys. Get it. Get it. Run, Yamper, run. It's so cute and adorable. Oh, I love you. Alright, who's over there just walking with those hands in his hoodie. No, no one wants a ball. Me. Throw. Oh, hi, Osh. How you doing, Osh? Hi. How's it going? It looks like it enjoys camping. It's excited about this new place. Nice. Wants to play with other Pokemon? Alright, have a good one then. Hi, Cherub. Go play. Yay! Alright, cook. Do I want to cook? I won't worry about cooking right now. Yeah, let's leave back us camp, because we're not here to enjoy camping. Just kidding. Is there anything behind her? Oh, you can't see anything behind. Let's see. Oh, this guy's about to catch us. Oh, what are you gonna do? You can't touch me. You can't touch me. Oh, you can't catch me. Oh, he got me. Every Pokemon's got a type or two, and every type has strong points and weak points. You're right. Correct. And you're full of weak points, because I'm gonna kick your butt. Schoolboy Peter. Oh, what is he using? Why is he's got a Sizzlepede? I've never seen a Sizzlepede. This is new. I'm gonna assume it's a fire one because it's a Sizzlepede. So I'll probably just knock it up with a quick attack. A double kick. My brain said double kick. And my mouth said another thing instead. Use bite. Oof. Bit me. Ow, that hurt, childy. It's a quick attack. Let's see. Ooh! You guys see that? That quick attack did damage. Damages. all the damages. I use quick attack. Sizzlepede dented. Yes. Is Sizzlepede like a fire poison Pokemon? Are they just messing with me? And they're like, he's not really fire at all. Ha 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 ha. Whoa. On the itch. On the itch side. Oof. Oh, what the heck is this? A Dodler? It's like a ladybug, but I give up, guys. I give up. If anybody tell me what this is, what does this look like? Well, it's got one-shotted, so I guess it doesn't matter now. I don't know what type it is. I think it's a bug, obviously, but bug type Pokemon. I don't understand types. I'm weak to people older than me. Yes, evolution! Oh, I've got a Slide Fox. It's evolved into a Feeble. Nice. We're in a Feeble. Feeble's data will be added to the Pokédex. Dark type, okay. It's about 3 foot high, 11 inches, weighs 43 pounds. Secret marks potential targets with a scent by following a scent and stalks its target and steals from them when they least expect it. Oof. Nice though. Fox wants to only move Thief. Sure, let's see what we got. His name's Feeble. Yep. Ooh, Fox is a dirty scoundrel. Snarl. Let's see, what does Thief do? User attacks and steals the target's held item. Can steal anything. Nice. I like how they give it a little mask. They're like, we shall give it a mask to make him look like a thief. But we're gonna. Isn't a raccoon supposed to be the thief? Why does it? But they pick a fox instead. It's a game design for the Pokemon. It's interesting. Don't quite understand it. Nice. Probably go defeat the first gym. I'm just gonna kind of run through. Usually I like to grind a little bit, like to get into those higher levels before I move on, but pretty high at the moment, I feel like. At least decently high. Defense, X defense, nice. She doesn't care about me. I wonder if she's gonna heal me. She's just smiling. Hi, me and my little sister have set ourselves as pop-up Pokemon Center service. Nice. Not that we asked anyone if we could or should. Galar, mine's pretty tough, rough on your team, isn't it? I'll help your Pokemon for you, friend. I don't know who you are. You're a stranger to me. Be gone, thought. Alright. See, this is why I don't need bets, because I am the bet. I'm always running bets. My life is a blip. What the hell is these guys? Oh, okay. Alright, I thought they're like mine helpers, but I was wrong. The Wild Timber. They call it Timber. Like Timber! I'm gonna assume it's weak to fire, so I'm just gonna quick attack it because I want to catch it. I want to catch this guy. Ooh, almost knocked him out. Ooh. Give me a forehead. Ouch. Super effective. Yikes. Gotta be on my P's and Q's with these guys. I'll knock you out. Straight out of this universe. Cause infinite and beyond. Yes, got him. Yes, this is what I'm talking about. Come on, let me get some shinies. I want some shinies. I'm gonna go as long as I can without losing a Pokemon. Dog's back here making noises at me. Oh, he's back again. Back in. I got the dog. I'm gonna get the dog. Give me 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 the dog. Oh yes. Yes. What are you gonna do about it? 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 Okay. Yeah, I almost forgot about this. Mob Crush. Mob Crush. What are you doing? You guys be doing? Timbers data. It loves helping out with construction projects. It loves it so much that if rain causes work to halt, it swings its log around and throws a tantrum. You become, what should we call him? Should we name him something? Anybody have any feedback about this name? Or maybe we should just hold off. Let's just hold off. We don't have a name. The question is yours. The choice is yours. Are you ready to accept? I wonder if I can change that. Actually, yeah, because I want to... That delay kills me. It really does. I already have that 1 second delay. Keyframe interval 1. What delay though? Replay buffer. Ow, okay. I don't have a hotkey set up. I don't want to use any of my keys. I already got enough stuff going on. Mouse 3. Alright, we'll just move on. Actually, have I checked this? Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Ty. Welcome back to reality.
Cat bug!
Oh man, this is my cat bug.
Yeah! Some yogurt! Yeah!
I didn't mean to take a screenshot. I'm screenshotting things? Alright. Apparently I'm just screenshotting things, guys. Don't mind me. I ran into another timber because I wasn't paying attention. Shoot. I don't remember what happens. This is effective. Low kick. Ooh. That's messed up, man. Low kicking me like that? I should just capture it before. Come on, you can do this, Ty. I believe in you. I got so distracted I didn't even notice. Oh! I need to get myself actual food. I'll probably go wake up Sam. She was having a hard time sleeping last night. Alright, I don't want to name her right now. I'm good. Send him to the box. Where he belongs. What? It just popped up. Another temp. Oh! Ooh, there's a little bat thing. There's a little bat thing. I can't remember what this bat is called. It's got a little heart nose though. A woo bat. That's what it is. A woo bat. Excuse me. So, we're gonna quick attack it because I feel like if I hit him with anything else, he's just gonna faint. Oh no, he used confusion. Oh. Here, let's try capturing him with this. I feel like that it doesn't take as much to get him to yellow. Like it used to. I used to have to get him pretty low, I felt like. A bar used to be like, the bar is sitting like here is yellow. And like it used to be like yellow was like here. Yellow was here and then like red was like right there. And I'm not used to catching Pokemon in yellow, to be honest. Yeah! While inside a cave, if you look up and see lots of heart-shaped mark linings, it's evidence the Woobat lived there. No. Good. Not gonna nickname him today. Oh, there was something over here. Okay. I almost missed it. A star piece. Okay. Let's see. Star pieces don't do anything, but they're good to sell. Use some extra money. Ooh, another. Oh, I found a revive. Okay. Revive me when you're not strong. So I'm going to restore his health. Now I'm going to swap him. He's... Yeah, we're just going to swap my main Pokemon. My eyeball has bright tears coming from it. Well, it was nice knowing you guys. I'm now dead. I'm no longer living. Nice, his health was restored. Sweet. What else did I get? I got Burn Heal and a Super Potion. Nice. Super Potions for the save. Alright, would it be good against these guys right now? Kinda at an impasse though, because I'm sitting at a Meowth, a Fox, a Dark, Ground. It's not Ground, it's Leaf. It's a Leaf Pokemon though. Two lightning ones. I don't have any water. Water would be good against this ground Pokemon. Hey, you really took the stuff out of it, huh? I just want to get that out of your mouth. Dork. Dork. Our dog's a dork. You're a dork. You're a dork. You're a cute dork, too. I got a cute dork. So, man. So, I'm dying inside. Don't mind me. Dying inside, never gonna find me living another life. Ow! You bit the toy, but you bit my leg at the same time. You're a freaking cheater. Go get it. Go get it. Get to it. Hop to it. Ooh, just popped my neck. Alright. So I haven't decided. What should I do? What should I do? And maybe I just keep going with Ragu. I'm just gonna switch things out. So. Oh, you think you're gonna get me? That's a lie. Should I keep going this way? I have no clue how to get through this place. Perfect sync. They're Pokemon partner. Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. Freaking die inside, guys. Please save me. Ooh, you know what? There we go. Less glitchy, sort of. Now my head just looks weird. We're gonna sit there and question why my head's sitting the way it is. Oh. Actually, that's actually nice. I'm just gonna sit him like this. Let's see. Now, as long as I don't have it too loud. And then I can swing this over here. So, shouldn't pick things up. I can still hear things. Cool. Cool. Alright, let's fight. Now I feel like it's 10 times better. Let's see, flame charge. We got goes against a Ragnarola. Ragnarola. We want to wipe him out, so we're gonna double kick him. Ragnarola's weak armor and his defense fell, but his speed rose. Okay, that's weird. Well, he's dead. He's out. We're gonna call. That was easy. Easy. Didn't get a mark on me. Already leveling up my Pokemon. Defeated the worker Keith. Looks like we weren't in sync. No, you were just too weak. Get that weak sauce out of here. Wonder if I can have an ideas coming to me. Hold on, real quick. I want to write this down. So I hear some interesting music going on in here. Let's see. Interesting. Yeah, on the left side, it actually like keeps track of what I've done recently. Command or sound effect. Word. What's up? What was I thinking just now? Oh. Interesting. Why do we got some music going on? Someone's like having a boogie over here. So. What's going on? Oh, where did I just go? I went back to Route 3. That's what happened. Oh, okay. I'm happy I went this way then. I was like, I don't know if I want to go this way because I'm not ready to leave the cave yet or the mine. Let's see, this takes you up here. It's a really beautiful game. I really like this game. All right, Galar mine, and there's another Poke. Well, another item right here. 3 great balls. Whoa, those are amazing balls. Amazing balls indeed, sir. The ear's edge. She looks suspicious. Oh, jeez, I almost got hit with a cart. Oh, she's gonna see me. Alright, I'll run by her. Oh no, there's more. I can't do this, guys. I can't do this. Don't die. In order to do good work, I can't slack off on training. Sounds a little more like you're slacking off on work. I'm not training. April, you dork. You dork. I get caught up on all those wires down here underneath my desk. Not that I really had wires to sticking out to begin with, but somehow your dog finds every wire in the universe and you're not paying attention. Oh, hold on. 1 second. You're challenged by a worker. Georgia. Georgia? What's Georgia doing here in Arizona, guys? Alright, I don't know what I'm strapping around, but... Oh my goodness! You're such a cutie! You're such a good boy. You're a good boy. You're a good boy. All the scritches. All the scritches for my cute doggo. What? This is just my fruit snacks. It's not for you. It's the only energy I have. Oh. Hold on. Yes and no. It isn't. What should I ask him? I might stick to this. Okay, overlay. Which I guess we need this overlay. Over. John, are you on? You're watching, dude. I want to show something real quick. Here's my starting scene right now. If we can fix this, it'd be amazing. What happened here? I went a little too big or something? Apparently I didn't notice I went too big. Am I just moving it? Oh, I think I got it. I want to just fix my start. Yeah, I'm only moving it. I don't think it's actually moving. See, we can go back to life. That's my overlay for right now. Or from my background starting screen. Starting screen. BRB screen and ending screen, or should it be scene? I should probably say scene instead of screen, but alright, let's go. Now I'm warm. We're gonna fight. Let's go. Let's see. I'm charged. We're just Ember him. Or just quick attack. Just quick attack. I'm kind of curious. It says effective, but I don't know how much damage they'll actually do to him. Enough to knock him out, apparently. Alright. Squeakers! Squeakers make squeak squeaks! Squeakers make squeak squeaks! Squeakers make squeak squeaks! Oh, yes! I'm gonna get that doggo. I'm gonna get that doggo. I'm gonna get that doggo. He's gonna get that doggo. Dun 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 dun. Yes, I got the dog. He's mine. He's down. He's down for the count, guys. He's never gonna get away now. Ow! Dog. Got my hand. Ugh. Oh no. Alright. Alright. I'm freaking warm now. Why am I warm? I keep going through changes, guys. Keep going through changes. Might actually put some music on. Because I feel like I'm getting bored. Listening to my own voice. Double kick. Yeah, why not? Dun 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 dun. Oh man, oh, I knocked him past half health, but I was hoping to knock him like out, down and out, you know. It's so hard to choose. I just do quick attack. Oh yeah, he out of here. Like yesterday's leftovers. Oh yeah. Yesterday's leftovers are the best. Bum, 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 bum. Let's see. We're gonna give him the best we ever been. We're gonna make him taste the candy. I wonder how quick attack works. It's not as strong as double kick, but let me see if I use double kick this next time and see if it actually takes away. No, that's not what I wanted to do. The dog is squeaking at my legs again. Come here, come on. I need you to put it right here, right there. Got it. Got the toy. It's my toy now. What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? He's too cute today. Why does Falco so cute today? No, he didn't wipe him out this time. Come on. Focus energy. Energy has been focused. Are you focused today? Have you decided that you will be the very best you've ever been?
Double kill.
FBI, open up! Oh no!
No! It's a trap!
Oh, that's right.
Denied.
Denied. Everyone's like, why are you clicking everybody in the world, bro? Hey, Moss. How you doing, dude? Have you played Pokemon before? How's your day been? You know, enjoying Sunday, hopefully? I know the day's probably almost over, right? It's like, what? This is like 1:20 right here. What the frick is going on? Sorry, I was hitting all my sound effects on my keyboard. Because I was trying to remember what they were. My bad. I'll have like a cheat sheet in front of me of all my stuff, so. But if you're asking what's going on in the game, I'm walking around on mine right now. I'm playing Pokemon Sword. You made for some good training. I guess. Okay, well, I took it to 14,000. I'm fine with that, you know. Yeah, Moz. No, you haven't played Pokemon? Oh man. So, you haven't played any Pokemon? Not even like a little bit of Pokemon? Like Pokemon Go? I don't know. I'm not sure what people play. I know you're like the second person today to hop in and said that you haven't played Pokemon before. So, any. Okay, so, what's the best way to put this? What's a good description of Pokemon? So you capture these creatures, which are called Pokemon. They have different stuff. So this is Pokemon Sword. Here's my Pokemon. It just didn't interest you? Okay. So you know a little bit about it. Like, you've seen it enough to know. So this is my starter Pokemon. He's actually a second evolution right now. But his name's Ryu. I know how the game works, kind of. Okay. So, Ryu is my fire Pokemon. He's an attack Pokemon also. Also have Meowth. I have... This is a Nixit, but I named him Fox AMT because he's another streamer I enjoy watching. Here's Nuzzleaf, and Sparkit, and Thunderfart, which is a cute little corgi. Like Maple. Sorry, if you can hear Maple, I apologize. He's squeaking the hell out of his toy right now. Ooh, it's been a while since you've seen Maple. Do you want to see him? Just let me know. Let me know if you want to see Maple, dude. Let's see. I don't have any frame drops lately. It's nice. I like when my computer doesn't drop frames. So I'm running around in a mine right now. I'm doing the gym challenge where you have to go to different towns and you have to defeat the leaders there. Know that you can collect them and they have weakness, evolve, and fight. Yep. You're on point, dude. You're pretty good. You already know. Those are... They set a whole set of new Pokemon in this game. There's a few that came back from the older ones, like the ones that are running around right now, and some of them in my team are new. Like these guys are new. They're called Roly-Polies? Roly-Coly? It's Roly-Coly, that's what it is. This is a Pokemon battle. Yeah, I'm just wandering through the mine right now, battling Pokemon trainers and Pokemon so I can get the hell out of this place. It's a Diglett! But yeah, dude. And you got any plans today? Do anything interesting? I can sit here and talk about Pokemon all day, but it's only gonna save you a little bit. I've heard that people are a little upset with this one because they ditched some of the Pokemon. They were super upset, to be honest, because they ditched all the Pokemon. Like, there wasn't gonna be any old ones, and then maybe a couple, and they brought some in. I honestly don't know why people are upset about it, because some of the better Pokemon games in the past, since the like Red and Blue were the first editions that came out, which was like Gen 1, and then you know, they stacked up. So they came out with some new ones with totally new Pokemon, and people loved the hell out of it. So I don't know why people are completely upset. No, the one I'm fighting against, yeah, he's a Gen 1. He's, if I remember correctly, he's a Gen 1. So Diglett's a Gen 1. The one I'm fighting with, Bunny, he's not a Gen 1. He's a Gen 8 technically. That's what we're in right now, is Generation 8. Let's see, we're gonna Flame Charge him. Yeah, we'll Flame Charge him. Why not? I don't use the moves so much. It doesn't have as much fighting moves or energy for power points. Think, can't think. Nope, I'm done. I'm already done. Yeah, and it's cool because if you fight with one Pokemon, you can see I have 92. Well, my Pokemon's level 22, so if you go too far up there, so you go up here. You see level 22 is what my main Pokemon's at. I just gained 92 XP or him using him in the battle. But because these guys like Meow, Fox, Noseleaf, and Sparkkit, and if I move over, Thunderfart, they all gain XP all at the same time. So that's nice. I just watched the whole JoJo Stardust Crusader season. Nice. What do you think about it, dude? What do you think about the JoJo Crusaders? No, wait. I've not seen the Stardust Crusader season. Is it Stardust? Is this... Wait, are we on the same page? Because I thought it was, that's the one with, what's his name? What's the JoJo in this game? Is it the gangster? He's a gangster. Isn't that this last season? Jotaro? Yeah, Jotaro. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know they call it Stardust. Stardust Crusaders. But yeah, I finished it too. Daisy. Let's hold on. I haven't met this drill bird yet. I don't. We'll double kick him because I'm assuming it's ground and ground's kind of weak to fight in water, just a little bit. I watched the whole season, so I watched them fight Jotaro fight the main boss guy. So I actually liked it a lot. It was a little weird. I wasn't into their costumes as much. Or their clothes. Their clothes to me were weird. You know, sad that kind of ended. India. What do you think I am, Dio? Like I got. Sorry, that's too loud. No, that's something loud. But yeah, I get the sound effect because I was like, yeah, why not? I freaking love it. Love it. I got into JoJo back when they first aired, or not when they first aired, after the first season was over, and I binge watched the whole season, and then I started watching from there. Like I was done. I was like, I watched season 2 when it came out, season 3, and is this season 4? I can't remember. But I thought it was interesting the way they did it. I mean, this season of JoJo was pretty interesting, pretty bizarre. This guy's like, I want to fight you. Caught me. Yeah, if trainers see you, they want to battle you most of the time. Sometimes they'll ask for a battle, but most of the time when you run into trainers, they just battle. They're just like, your luck, you're trapped here. Yep, it's really cold. Some of the art designs are crazy. Like here, let's give a rock a wheel to sit on. I'll call it a creature. Super effective double kick. The hawk is under my see. But Mose, let me know if you want to see the doggo. What other anime you're watching, dude? Cause I'm in the Fire Force right now. I like Fire Force a lot. It's freaking amazing. Posing really cool effective. Defeated a worker. If I only used the item effectively when I was in a pinch. Nice. My ear is done. Alright, we're gonna grab this ball. Found a pair of heavy duty boots. Nice. These boots prevent the effects of traps set on a battlefield. What? Is that an item that my Pokemon holds? Or is that something I can wear? Oh, they also added something cool. So they added Pokemon Camp. Pokemon Camp is like a way you can interact with your Pokemon. I wonder if I can camp it, set it up right now. Let me set it up. Let me set it up. So you can look at all their Pokemon. That's my Feeble. That's what my Fox is. I call it Feeble. Is my Pika Pika? No, I don't want to keep cut. I pressed the wrong button. No. Anyways, we'll just go on. Yeah, I was watching Fire Force as well. Then I was like, I don't want to wait for the episodes. Said I'm gonna binge watch that JoJo to death. Okay. Yeah, I hate waiting for episodes, but right now I like Fire Force a lot. So Fire Force, and what else have I been watching? Hero Academia just started out with a new season. It's driving me a little bit nuts because I'm just waiting for each episode's killing me. but I'm curious. And have you been watching Sword Art Online? I want more Overlord if you know it. Yes, I freaking love Overlord. I was not as happy when they spent like half the season with the lizards. I was like, why are we with these lizards? Like, what do they have to do with anything? Like, I don't know. It was weird. It's weird, but I'm super excited. I'm curious what's gonna happen because what's the like the main assistant? Not the main assistant. So you have Overlord, then you have the chick, and then what's his third assistant? The one that has the glasses. He's like, you know, oh, I know exactly what to do. Like, I'm kind of scared that he's gonna become the Overlord's. Every episode that includes Bone Daddy flexing on some peeps is a good episode. Yes, yes it is. I freaking love it when they do that. I hate that they didn't show him for like the longest time. You know what I'm saying? But can't remember who the freaking character is though. I'm gonna have to look it up. You're making me look this up because I'm like, Mose, you're killing me, man. Characters from Overlord. Yes, it's the one I want. Apparently I ran into the wrong one. Let's see. Load for me, dude. Load. I'm excited. I got a new monitor. I feel like every episode only lasts a minute. Yeah, the short episodes, even in well, no, I've seen some short anime episodes. But let's see. Nine's all cool. Initial members. Manga. No, that's not it. Oh, that's the. Oh, okay. Oh, so we don't know all of them. All right. Where's? Oh, okay. Initial members. I don't want initial members. NPCs. Albedo is the one floor guardian, a floor guardian that like loves the hell out of him. Sheltier is awesome. Demigurg. I feel like Demigurg is gonna be a challenge to his rival right there. Demigurg. This is who I was searching for. I was searching for Demigurg because I think they're gonna make him like a like the not antagonist, the protagonist. No, it is an antagonist. Yeah, antagonist to Overlord or Momomoga. You feel he's gonna betray him? Yes, that's how this seems to me. Like, even though he's like supposed to be, like, I feel like he's too smart. Like, he's so smart that like he's gonna catch that Momo isn't doing what he's supposed to be doing or something. Like, it's always that like fine edge of a knife right there where I feel like he's gonna do it. No one betrays Bone Daddy. I know. I just said that's how it feels. I feel like that's gonna be, but we still have. They have so much more they need to explain. Why there's like, obviously Bone Daddy is the only one, you know, on the planet, like that got stuck in the game. Someone else obviously got stuck in the game. We just haven't come across them yet. So, do I need to get ready for this guy? I think he wants to battle me. Yeah, I need to restore Ryu real quick. You can read all you want, but like, I haven't read the manga, so I'm just going off of base to what they've been showing, you know? The Bone Daddy's life. I will say that proudly. Are you giving me like, it's all ogre now? You know, I'm not even gonna bother. It's like 4 HP. I think people that mind control the Sheltier are the real players. Yeah, well, are you sure they are? Because they kind of made it like they were, you know, but like my brain keeps saying that like they seem like NPCs in the game. Is the dragon that can change into a human. You know? Let's see. Alright, we go back out of this real quick. I don't see anything around here. We're just gonna run up this guy. He still hasn't told us his name. We don't know who this is. Lore YouTubers say so. Okay. Okay. I haven't checked that out. I haven't watched any YouTube videos on it. I've been just going off, you know, the anime and what they presented to me so far. So if they are the real people, then what's gonna happen? Are they gonna become friends, or are they gonna fight the whole time? I feel like they're gonna just fight. You are aware the chairman is more important than the champion, right? Oh, but will Momo be able to tell if they're real players or not? Because look at him, like he's been struggling. Like his internal struggle right now is like whenever he tries to be less of the overlord, like he becomes more of the overlord. Or like some magical power comes in and makes him the overlord even more. You know, like when he got excited or something, it instantly like calmed him down. So they talk about that in the lore though. I was chosen by the chairman himself, so that makes me more amazing than you. I do not care who you are. You should prove beyond doubt just how pathetic you are and how strong. Dude, I'm still waiting for your name, man. He's got cool finger gloves. Ooh. The fingerless gloves? No, it's just got like a hole in one. He's Michael Jackson in it right now. I'm pretty sure his other hand doesn't have anything. But yeah, what else has a YouTuber said about Overlord? They got a vision of destruction, and that a big evil's coming, and that's why they were searching for it. Oh, okay. Maybe I missed it. Oh, you dog! You're not supposed to be eating things that you're not supposed to be eating. You just chewed the hell out of the speaker. Oh, there it is. I was like, I hope you didn't eat the plastic. This is my dog. He's chewing on this. And he got the squeaker out. Ugh, he's been working on it hard. Okay. So they were looking for him. I guess he technically is evil, like, but I don't know. It's like have you watched Reincarnated as a Slime? Let's see, it's a slime. They're going against Solosis. I have no clue what Solosis may be. Oh, let's just flame charge him. Why not? It's my strongest attack right now. Boom! One shot! Oof! Denied! Hi, Maple! How you doing? How you doing? Oh, come here. Come here. Oh! Here. This is a doggo. I stream for you guys. Oh, all the kisses. All the kisses. All the kisses. Oh, I'll pay you like a banjo. Hey, you're like a banjo. If I had a real green screen, you would be able to see him better. But I don't have a real green screen yet. I need to get it. Oh. Asking why he calms down, it's because of his undead abilities. Well, no, I'm not asking if he calms down because of that. I'm just saying that the internal struggle is that, you know, his I know, doggo. Oh, the kisses from doggo. Yeah, he's good boy. Oh. Hold on, I'll be right back, but no, I honestly think it's not his undead abilities. I feel like his undead abilities are gonna make him less Momo. Like, he's gonna be less human. Because look at him, like, he's like, oh, I don't really want to kill people, but he's like, no, just kill people. And I think that's like the tipping point. Like, he was here on the human side, just edging towards the undead side, and then that part where he just like, oh, no, I'm fine with killing people, just pushed him over. So his undead abilities are now affecting his personality. Damn, I didn't expect that doggo to be so damn cute. He's freaking adorable. Oh, Mozet, you need to hop in Discord. We got Discord if you don't mind. We post pictures of him too. So, Discord. Hold on, and I'll be right back. Cause I gotta go check on the girlfriend. See him. My fan was on. Listen to your families. Leave the door open for a little bit. 2 doggos. I only have 1 doggo. But someone else has a doggo? I know that for sure. I think that's Equal. Equal has another dog. But you're on Discord right now? Is that what just happened? Is that why you're freaking out? Boop boop. That was weird. Well, thanks, dude. General. Yeah, I forgot who the other dog. Yeah. I like how you found them. The corgis were all friends. Oh yeah. That's Cake. That's Maple's girlfriend. That's right. I forgot about it. Yeah, it's Maple and Cake. They come over to hang out and stuff and enjoy. It's funny. I don't know if we have any pictures of just her though. We got a couple other doggos. Is that Severo? I think that's Severo. Yeah, if you keep scrolling up, there's all the doggos. Yeah, Eagle has a doggo. There's a cat too. We got a lizard. Yeah, just all the cuteness. So you need cuteness in your life, you know what I mean? Don't overload yourself too fast, alright? We also have an Instagram for Maple too. Actually, I can type that in, it's funny. Thanks, Sam, I appreciate it. I think it's just Maple, right? There you go. Maple. So Maple with Hiccups is Maple's Instagram. Raflida. They went really emo with all these Pokemon. Overload you with dog cuteness. This is what I do. This is why I love my dog. It was not very effective. No, she must be a fairy type. Definitely a fairy type. Alright, frackin' snackin'. Gonna have to hit it hard. Flame charge. Oh, nice. Flame charge worked amazingly. I think it was effective. I don't think it was super effective though. Nice. So it's at level 22. I have to stop looking before. No, it's too late. You're already done. You're already overwhelmed. The dog's down here eating his food. Oh dear, what have I been doing? Oh, you've been beat. Oh, hey, Tenna. What the heck is this Pokemon? I'm confused. But yeah, once you're done looking at all the freaking adorable, cute pictures, Overlord. Have you watched? Tell me how you think of what freaking anime is this? I am losing my mind today. I can't remember names of anything right now. But I'm just curious if you've been watching these. Let's see. Oh, Assassin's Pride. Yeah, Assassin's Pride. So I've been watching Assassin's Pride, Dr. Stone, Black Clover. I'm behind. I haven't actually watched 108 or 109 yet. ReZero. Don't bring ReZero up, alright? I'm fucking mad they haven't done anything about it. Like, I've been wanting to watch ReZero in a hot minute now. And they haven't even given out all of them. So, I've been watching a couple. What else is there? Can't think of it. I need to get back to watching this one. The Gundam Divers was pretty nice. Let's see. Yeah, I know. I'm like, where is the next season? Are they ever gonna make a next season? Oh, One Piece. I've been watching One Piece, but it's I watch One Piece when like all these guys are not updating. Oh, I want to watch Welcome to Demon School, Iramu-kun. Alright, come back. Let's see. Yeah, I'm looking for the next season of a lot of shows, let's be honest. Looking for next season of Overlord, next season of ReZero. I'm looking for the next episode of, what is it? Is it Blood? Oh, I can't think of it. But you always watch stuff on Crunchyroll, or you watch things on other sites too? One Piece until 100 episodes, but it's so much I said frick it. Yeah, I actually started when there were like, I want to say 600 or 700 episodes deep, and it was overwhelming. But my friend was like, "You once you get into it, you really like it." So I did, and I was like, and I went all the way. I didn't stop. I think I like the newer episodes better. So if you want to hop back in One Piece by any chance, like I would say start with around episode 600 or so, and just hop from there. And I think that's a pretty good starting point. I feel like anything past before 600 was good and it was nice to know, but it didn't. It picked up. It picks up randomly. Like you have like I want to say like 30 or 40 episodes of stuff that like they're just sitting there running around, and then there's like maybe 10 episodes of them fighting somebody. Wouldn't I be confused about the stories? Honestly, I feel like they did a really good job in One Piece with not having that happen. You literally, they literally do flashbacks for everything, and it'd be like it's like a small flashback, but like enough that you can catch what's going on. And if you're too completely confused, then I would just ask me or somebody, because I wouldn't mind explaining. But like everything they do, like they just bought one of the characters back. It was called Kuma. They brought him back and they did a flashback to the episode, like a small little flashback of like what happened and why they're so upset about him. So they explain. It pisses me off because like I've been keeping up with it, and they'll do flashbacks to things that I'm like, oh well, I remember that. Like I didn't need that. Like it'd be like one episode of just like, oh, he was freaking out. Power of chaining ability. Of chaining quality. Oh, yeah. You're talking about my stream? You can change it. I'm happy that exists, actually. Yeah, it should. I should have it. I don't know. I haven't been checking my stream. Yeah, oh, nice. I'm actually streaming at 1080 right now. Haha! Things that you forget you're doing. I am very merciful. If I wasn't, then people will die. Am I buffering for you right now, or you just want better quality? Oof. Hey look, here's the map of Galar region. It's crazy. Route 4. Alright. I think she's gonna heal me. Hi, me and my big sister have set ourselves up as pop-up Pokemon Center service. Not that we asked anyone if we could or should. You've done a good job making it this far. I'll hold our team up for you. That smile. Her smile? I know, it was a little creepy, but we don't talk about things like that. We just keep going. Oh, who's Scott? Yeah, who the heck is Scott? Want to swap? Sure, I'll swap. Alright, hold on. I said swap. Swap cards. Is it locked? No, I don't want. He said, do you want to swap cards? And I tried to swap cards. It's just good creepypasta material. Look at this. She got a smile. No, hold on. She's like, oh, look at me. She's watching me. It's super creepy. You just clip that part right there. It's the only way I can get her. There you go. No. I wish I could zoom in. Did I take pictures? That'd be great. Oh well, we're moving on. Creepypasta for sure. And look, there's a camp. Oh, you can also play with other people, or you can run into things. There's a tree. We gotta shake the tree. I won't be barking up the wrong tree, that's for sure. Oh man, this tree's already shaking really bad. I'm gonna be doomed for it. Only one? 3 berries in the ground? I mean, 3 berries isn't really worth it. No, there's a Pokemon. Dang, it's just a squirrel. Got nuts in his mouth. Got the chubby cheeks. They're extra thick. Oh, I'm just cooling down in here. So much better now. No, Scovet, you're gonna mess up my streak. I've been trying to get shinies. You can get shinies by capturing more Pokemon. Or if you keep a streak of catching Pokemon, you'll happen to run into a shiny, and shinies are like a different color Pokemon, and they'll have some special stats sometimes. Me playing Dawn of War, Dark Crusader. What do you mean by that? You talk about the creepypasta or the shaking trees? Cause I'm not barking up no wrong trees here, right? It's an RTS game. RTS game. Oh, roll turn system. No, I don't want to give it. We want a big cute squirrel most. Just change the squirrel's name. Let's see, alright, we found this. What's it about? Real-time strategy, thank you. For some reason I was thinking turn-based. I was like, is that turn-based? Like StarCraft. Okay. Honestly, I've never played StarCraft. Believe it or not. Let's see. Here you go. No, I don't. I wanted to talk to Molly. I'm going to Pokemon playing together. You're welcome to stop by my camp too if you like. Okay. Heresy. I know heresy. Man, I've been playing on PC only for the past. I can hear my dog munching on his bum. I've only been playing PC for the past year or so. I've almost had this computer for about a year come December. So that's why I haven't played StarCraft. Or I would probably played it long time ago. Like, how old are you, Moms? And when is your birthday again? Look at all the cute Pokemon. You can take a toy out and you can throw it. Look, you can shake this and make them go crazy. Come on, come here. How old are you? Yes, Moms. How old are you? And when's your birthday? So I don't have your birthday down. There's a Rouse. You're 15? Oh, nice. Dude, they're attacking it. Let's make them happy though. Oh. Oh, easy there. Easy there. Oh, you guys are attacking. Somebody save me. The controller's burping at me. But 15, awesome. I'm over here yelling and cussing. You over here 15. Woo. They're chasing it. They're chasing it. I'm gonna have. No, I can only go this far. I can't go any further. Anyways, let's go. Oh, my back. I'll put it away. You can also cook in this game. Oh, hold on. So, did you watch Kenchi's Mightiest Disciple then? Out of curiosity? That's an old one. It used to be on Netflix for a bit. But Kenchi's Mighty Disciple, that's a freaking good one. That's a good anime. And Yu Yu Hakusho, those are the OG games. This person's wearing a Eevee costume. Where's my Eevees at? Pretty sure no. Brain fart, can't remember what I was talking about. Don't mind me. Mockery. Yeah, this is the first time seeing this Pokemon. So Kenchi's Mightiest Disciple, if you watch Netflix or anything like that, it's a fighting anime, and it's freaking amazing. It's a poor kid who decides, not a poor kid, a kid who gets beat up by bullies, and he runs into a master of dojo's daughter. So the daughter takes him back to the dojo, and they take him on because they see he has a lot of potential. So they train him and everything, and they beat the hell out of him. It's freaking hilarious, and he pretty much he ends up just fighting people, and he's freaking amazing. He's supposed to be the best disciple they've ever had, you know, and it ended unfortunately before they did a. Like they ended this, they ended the damn anime, but they didn't do it where, like, I felt satisfied with it. But at least you can say it's ended, so you can binge watch all of it and love the hell out of it. And there's Yu Yu Hakusho is where Spirit Gun came from. I want to say it came out before Dragon Ball Z, but like like Kamehameha, like Yu Yu Hakusho started it up. But they did it in a different way. Dragon Ball Z will always be a OG. Top one for sure. So I beat him. There's a Diglett here. Do I want to catch a Diglett? No, I already caught a Diglett. I already have one. I just want to see what else is over here. What the hell is this? What the? They changed the Meowths? What the heck? Oh, jeez Louise. This is an ugly Meowth. What in the world were they thinking? We're gonna quick attack him. Just let me know if you want me to name you after any of these Pokemon. Should I name you after a Meowth? Or nickname Meowth? Mose? Moska? But tell me what Dawn of the War is, Mose. Or Dark Crusade. Ooh, did you see the new trailer for Diablo 4? Yeah, Diablo 4. I didn't watch Dragon Ball for the same reason I didn't watch One Piece. Okay, I will definitely. It does not bother me one bit. I'm not a big Dragon Ball Z fan. They have a lot. You haven't watched Hunter x Hunter either. No, I just wiped him off the board. I was gonna catch him, and there goes my streak. My life is over with. But I don't feel like you miss out on Dragon Ball Z. I feel like everybody talks about it so often that you can literally not watch it in this grass. Is this another Yamper? I think this is another Yamper. You watch Hunter x Hunter? Nice. I freaking love Hunter x Hunter. I wanted them to keep going, but it looks like they're not bringing it back anytime soon. Because I think the creators of Hunter x Hunter have actually done a couple other animes already in the past, like 4 years or so. I think it's been since the end of it. Flame charge. We'll just knock them out. I already messed up my streak already. Yampa, you're so cute. I haven't actually used Double Cave. It's fun. Is there any other anime you watch? Can't think of anything. It's Mosetka. Mosetka? Like that? Mosetka? Like, is it a hard T or a soft T? Like Mosetka. 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 Okay, I'll take that. Mosetka. Mosetka. For me, it's a little bit of a mouthful, to be honest. It's harsh on my throat. I say that. Not mouthful. Hard, very hard. A hard T, a hard. Mosetka. 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 Thank you for letting me know actually how to say your name. I'm serious. Like slightly dying inside if I'm sitting here butchering it the whole entire time. Man, I can hear my dog munching on that bone. Can you hear him? No, you can't. Too quiet. Hold on. Let me plug in my camera so you can see my dog being ridiculously cute over here. Cause I got a doggo cam. Doggo cam to the rescue cam. Oh. Moseto? Moseto? That's easier. Just do Moseto. Moseto! It's like a wine, if you know anything about wine. Moseto is delicious. Or Moscato. Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. I was trying to set up the doggo cam. Doggo cam away. Maybe I took it off. No, that should be it. How's my doggo cam not working? Ugh. Trying to get my doggo cam to work. Aseto. I'm really trying to show you my dog, but camera doesn't want to work? Question mark? Doggo cam work. Come on. Oh, it is working. Never mind. I'm crazy. No. There you go. You can just barely see him. He's just chilling. Just chilling. He's a goofball. Okay, so about Dawn of War, I hope you try it one day, but I doubt you'll like it since you haven't played StarCraft and it's a 2007 game, so the pathfinding is a little rough. Okay. Should I just look this up? Should I just bring it up? Just watch a trailer for it? It's a real-time strategy. Think of a lot of things. I think I looked it up actually once before. Let me bring it over. See, real-time strategy. Do as you wish. Yes, master. I will do as I wish. And you're still playing this in the background, so... now I'm all trying to think of Dawn of War. Ooh. Which one should I do? The very top one? Okay. Oh no, it's very over the top. Okay. Gameplay. Let's do gameplay. Not walkthrough. No walkthrough. Dawn of War, Dark Crusade. Okay. There you go. No, that's Warhammer. That's not it. Is it? Is it Warhammer? Oh, okay. These games are a little difficult. Not really difficult. I don't get into them much, to be honest. I've played them. Yeah. Sweet. No, I played. What have I played that's similar to this? Something similar. I just don't play these games often. It's not what I got into. But we will survive. Someone with strong Tyrell, and I will try to play it. Oh, I know what I did. I played Sins of an Empire. That's similar, but on a what's the word? On universal scale. Coach will be here if you ever play it. Okay. Well, fine. What's that? My doggo is just done for. Someone shot my doggo. And turn out the doggo kill. But yeah, dude, I will definitely ask and need your help. So that's the best time I get into games is when people can help me out. Unless you're talking about something where I can help you, and that's different. Doggo, come back. Oh no, I ran into another one of these. Another Meowth. It's a wild Meowth. He's got like a beard. He's like Santa Claus, but not. Flame charge. Yeah, I know it's super effective. Just go kick him. You think I one shot him this time? No, didn't one shot him. One shot him. 2 hits though. It's. Oh, I don't remember where a button was. I don't remember buttons. I don't know. I need to get a stream deck. I need to get a stream deck where you just hit stuff. Who knows? Who knows when the doggo comes? Nobody knows. Alright. No, shut up. You don't want to get... Trying to run. Pile of silver. The town's like right there. I can see it. I can touch it. I can smell the town. Do not do this to me. Run! Oh, I think that almost got me. Accuracies, yeah, X accuracy. X accuracies are just items you can use to get better accuracy. It helps you out. But if you use it, you lose a turn. Woo, where do you think you're going? What's going on? He's just rolling. Look, it's a Woo. It crashed into you and stopped. Oh, this is the first gym, I can't wait. Gym challengers. I'm a gym challenger, yeah. This is, what's the word for it? I forgot the word. I forgot the word for, gym leader. He's the gym leader. Jeez Louise. Jeez. I'll call him coach. Masato the coach. Where do you live, Masato? I forgot where you live. You live... It's not Europe, right? It's in Europe. Bulgaria. You live in Bulgaria. Well, thanks for watching, dude. All the way from Bulgaria, dude. It's freaking crazy. I've been in Germany. That's the closest I have been to Bulgaria. Just head on this dude's route and you'll right in the stadium. Yay! Come on now, back to stadium with you too. We can't keep gym challengers waiting. Ah. How's Bulgaria? Is it cold there right now? Because it's like... I don't really know how warm it is right now. Tomorrow morning. Okay. Yeah, it's 84 degrees right now. Fahrenheit. So that would be... Semi-cold. Semi-cold. Nice. It's like cold to me, but it's not like cold. If I was out in the sun right now, I wouldn't be dying. 85 degrees here. It's like 29 degrees Celsius right now. That's what it is for us. We're sitting at 29. Semi-cold. It's like, what do you consider semi-cold though? Yeah, turf-filled stadium. It's amazing. And then just to wake you up. The place is jam-packed. It's been ages before it comes up. Oh, but Sonya was looking for you, Ty. She wanted to ask you about something. She tried to ask me, but I had no idea. Yeah, because you're a lump of coal, bro. You're so dense. No one could get through that brain of yours. Hop. Cold enough to not go out with a cold enough to not go out with just a shirt. Oh, I could definitely walk out if you're without a shirt. It'd be fine. Like I could probably go in shorts if I really wanted to. Wow. Oh, it's Yamper. Oh, if it's Sonya's Yamper, he's good, but he'll show you the way. Why is a Pokemon showing me the way? Alright, I'm gonna heal my Pokemon first. So smart like that? Pokemon Doggo? Yeah. I was showing you Yamper earlier. See? I have a Yamper right there. That's dope. I like how they did that. Show you the roof. Someone sent me something. He seems to be a similar species to your doggo. Yeah. Corgi. Oh, that's Rolling Fields. Dapple Seafood. Pokemon side, it's time for a max raid battle. Nice. Apple Grove. Okay, I don't know where that's at. Come join in the fun. It's always fun. When you're dying. Yeah, they made him like a corgi. Why? I don't know, but they made him a corgi. Nice. I'm at 25 monies. I got all the monies. Ooh, you can get a lot of Pokeballs. Let's see. They everyone's been excited about that. About that they put a corgi into the. Oh, I got one Premier Ball. Oh, that's nice. For every 10 Pokeballs you buy, you get a Premier Ball, which is like a special ball. Running ads are owned by Mr. Rose. Oh, nice. I guess. Nothing around. Geoglyph? Maybe a Geoglyph jam or something? Interesting. But, my brain's slightly addled. I'm just gonna drink that. Are you drawing over there? Did you get dinner already, Masato? Masato, you get anything to drink? Food wise. Bowwark. Bowwark. Talk about Bowwark. A geoglyph? I heard nobody knows his name. Maybe it was a forbidden name or something. What the hell is a geoglyph? If you've never seen it before, you should really go see the amazing scenery from the hilltop. In fact, you should go see it again. Maybe you've seen it before. Don't tell me what to do. It's 11 p.m. over here. Oof. 11 p.m. Jeez. You got school tomorrow or something? Still looking at the photo is enough to bring back a rush of emotions. I don't know what they're talking about. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's why I was excited to get this game, because it looked good, and they also had Yamper, which looks like a corgi. You're like, who wouldn't want to see a cute little corgi wave his butt around? No. What is over here? Anything interesting over here? Oh, found something. It's shiny. Oh, leaf stone. We can evolve Pokemon with it. So other than that, what other games do you play, dude? What's that? I've been like play God of War, Warhammer. Were they made by people or Pokemon? Who knows? Such mysterious stone structures. Were they made by people or Pokemon? I don't know. It's a good question. It's a good place to look. Thanks, Yamper. Yeah. Have you been playing Monster Hunter though? Because you kind of been missing in action. I haven't seen you lately, so how do you come? Because I wanted to hear what you thought. What is the thought you had? And get you into other games. Oh, so this is a glyph. What do you think of it? The geoglyph. The Darkest Day, the Dynamax. Seems likely. It sure looks like a gigantic Pokemon. Suppose people 3,000 years ago could have just mattered. I just want Iceborne already. I know, man. Iceborne, where the hell are you? You ever played Tomb Raider? By the way, I have Tomb Raider. I freaking love Tomb Raider. It's amazing. It can't just be coincidence. And it looks like Pokemon and people, maybe. One time ago, a great black storm covered the Galar region and giant Pokemon ran rampant. Just a little. Okay, the new Tomb Raider or the older Tomb Raiders? I should have been more specific with my questioning. But I'm happy you hopped the Discord, dude. I'm super excited, man. We hang out. The new one? Oh, okay. Yeah. The first new one, what is it? I forget which one it is. It's one where she lands on the island. It was good, but it wasn't as good in my opinion as was it Shadow? Shadow? Why can't I remember names? I have to look everything up today. Tomb Raider. Is Shadow of... Oh yeah, Shadow of oh, yeah, it's Shadow Tomb Raider. That's what it is. So they have Tomb Raider and they have Shadow Tomb Raider. Makes sense now. Yeah, okay. Shadow Tomb Raider was freaking dope. It was honestly freaking amazing. I love it. I really should go back to play it again. On Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I still need to finish. Let me know, dude, what you want me to play. You want me to keep playing Pokemon? Or I got Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I've been playing that a lot. I've been grinding it. It's nice. I really want to go pro with it. I missed the chance though. They're doing an amateur tournament online, and I missed it. You put the lead card in your album. And no, thank you for stopping in. By the way, you've been freaking amazing. I have to thank you because I'm at like over 60 followers right now. I'm like this close to getting I feel it for Twitch, and then I need 3 average viewers. That's what I need. So right now you're helping me out. I really appreciate it. It's been amazing. I'm happy you're coming and talking like this, dude. I should do this more often, man. Brain fart though. Can't even think. Oh yeah, get affiliate. I'm super excited. And I can start making the stream a little bit better. I mean, I already have been, but it just helps out with bills too. But Bob Ross. He smiles. Ooh, Bob Ross. You know, do some Bob Ross watching. You actually watch Bob Ross? That's my question. I feel like everybody knows Bob Ross. Things will go well if you use fire, flying, or bug type moves. These two would be pretty bad if your Pokemon were in fighting form. Ooh, 2 revives. No, you do not know Bob Ross. How dare you not know Bob Ross, dude? What in the earth is wrong with you? Just kidding. I'll pull it up in 1 second. Let's see. It's always good to watch some Bob Ross. You can't go wrong without some Bob Ross. With Bob Ross. And no, stop. Alright, gonna exit. Full screen mode, we're going to mute this. Nice. Alright. I have to keep switching screens here. I know him, I just haven't watched his records. Okay, so let's do the best of Bob Ross real quick. I'm just distracting us because I need the distraction. Best of Bob Ross moments. Oh, it was an ad. Turn away! Don't watch the ad! Have you seen the new Sayo, by the way? They call this this season the Underworld. It's a pretty epic ad for it. Oh, you don't like watching videos of dead people? Oh, I'm sorry. I will continue on with Pokemon because I can respect that, dude. I can respect that. That's for hella sure something crappy. I hate it because there's one person I followed on YouTube and someone killed her. Sad. Monday? Oh, that's Monday. Okay. I remember. But Bob Ross is awesome. You would really like his videos, I think, if you're into art. Anyways. Bowart? Hold on, can we just talk about this? Can you actually take a picture? You can. Hold on. I want to be a squirrel. How do you... I can't fit myself in there. Okay. Struggling a little bit. How do you take a picture though? That's the question. I don't think it's part of my stuff though. It's a good question. I don't know how to take a picture. Whoopsie. Go back into full screen mode. Let's see. I want to stick my head in the photo stand when I grow taller. Why don't you just do it now? Alright. Oh, I was gonna talk to this child. Treasure lies buried somewhere in turf field? Find the treasure map. The trick to finding a treasure lies in the standing stones. Seek yourself 3 standing stones with grass before the other ones. Use well that strength and find then the strength of the strength in the end. Dally not if you in mind to find what time has left behind. That's what it says, but I can't make heads or tails of it. Well, it sounds fun to me. I was watching a long stream someone playing Doki Doki, and halfway the video I scrolled down the comment and saw that he was dead. Oh. Bob Ross, our person you're watching stream. But yeah, Bob Ross has been gone for a while. Unfortunately, a beautiful mind in the world of art passed away. We will forever try to remember him. What's this? Fire? It says fire. It's carved in the stone. Huh. It was... Oh, Ituka? Yeah, man. It's tough. Gotta remember people somehow. If we don't, you know, who's gonna remember them? Veterans Day! What's up, Mario? What do you mean Veterans Day? Yeah, you can send pizza all you want, but doesn't mean I love you, Mario. Sorry, Mario's on Mixer. Oh, it says Veterans Day. It's just a helmet. I don't even worry about it. Sorry, I'm gonna wake up a bit. I'm feeling a little drowsy. Oh, anybody down to do some push-ups with me? Oh, some jumping jacks? Some blurpees? And Mosato, what are you gonna do when you out of school already? You're still going to school. What are you gonna do when you get out of school? Oh, Mixer love. Just all the stuff. My cousin's over here trying to level up his watching since he haven't watched in a while. Running around. Beautiful flowers too, nice. It says grass. Huh, grass. You guys want some grass? Some lovely grass? I don't even know what I just picked up. I wasn't paying attention. Doesn't matter. We're going on. We're going to make it. It's time to do some gym battling. Let's do it. Oof. I've been out on for almost 3 hours. Grass gym badge. I got it in one try. I reckon I'm just about the greatest when it comes to wrangling Wooloo. I've had plenty of practice at it after all. So apparently he beat him in one try. You guys think we're gonna have a problem with him? You should play Dawn of War, Faith, or Doki Doki Literature Cup. No, you're not gonna give me a play Doki Doki. I was already watching one guy who was playing Doki Doki. Doki's free. I don't know what Faith is though. What's the full title for Faith? And what is it about? I mean, I'm kind of down to do Doki Doki, but we can also just switch it up. I don't think I set it up yet, but here, let me save. You get Faith is a spoopy game. Spoopy. There's a spoopy game I've been trying to play. It's called Cornarium. It's a 1 hour game. That's really quick. I've never had a 1 hour game like that. Let's see. Alright. I'll go here. I have Link's Awakening, Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros. Mario Party? Wild Mario Party? No, I don't think I do. No, I don't. Breath of the Wild. Let's Go Pikachu. I don't remember downloading Fortnite for Switch. But apparently I do. I have it for Switch. And Just Dance 2017. Because why not? Can't judge me, alright? But there's one game I do have that I haven't set up yet. Oh no, it's fine. I'm playing. I'm streaming on PC. Not an issue. Oh, there it is. Why can't I? No, it won't let me. That's so mean. I'm gonna close this window. I thought I had it on. No, I fixed it. I fixed it. That's right. There you go. My Hero Academia Deku and the house. Alright, this is what I'm gonna do. You ever watched Getting Over It? I feel like most people have. And feel free. The song request is exclamation song request, and then you can drop whatever title in there. Just keep it good. I'm trying to remember where Getting Over It is. There it is. Found it. Excuse me. Dying inside. Ugh. But cousin, how you doing? You're over here just bumming around. Apparently it doesn't want to start. There we go. Oh, hope it launches over on this window, on my screen. I mean, screen, window, whatever you want to call it. Let it be. Let it be. Amazing. That's all it needs to be. It's just straight pure amazing. No, I have it set as mature. That's fine. Not worried about it being. It just can't be crazy, like that's word, like completely R-rated. Like you're are mature. Like I don't want to hear people having sex. All right, just well, I enjoy some good music. Is what it is. Let's see. Might be a little loud. Hey, Zenwave, what's up, man? What's going on? Welcome back. Long time no see. Why are you laughing? You joined in some interesting conversations about me